Well, as I said before, non-systematic programs lead to non-systematic control. So if you got a partial program, you're going to get partial control, which means fewer PIs. You get fewer PIs, you're going to get more groups of animals that come through. And the reason that other property had the rec it had, and probably had a rec consistently, was because it rotationally grazed. It was getting really high levels of immunity, and the animals that couldn't handle the production system were falling out early. So the PIs were dying out early, but the animals were getting a high level of immunity into each one of these individual manager groups. So they were clearing. It was trying to clear itself continually. And it kept getting reintroduced back at the bottom end every couple of years. And so they get these sporadic wrecks. So if you only kind of control BVD, you get less natural exposure, which means more high-risk females, which can mean more likelihood of having a wreck, even if you're vaccinating. So like if we go back to that wreck that I was telling you about, if we'd have gone into the year that they were all immune and got rid of the PI, we would have solved, there wouldn't have been any problem. If we'd have gone into the green girls that were naive, and if we'd have vaccinated with pesty, which would have been my advice. And then if they still would have chosen to box them with the group above, because they would have said, well, we're pretty safe. Here's the cool part. Remember, we got 50 abortions. Well, the vaccine's 80% effective. Let's say we would have got 10. All right, we got 50 dead calves by weaning. Let's say the vaccine's 80% effective. We would have got 10. Instead of 120 PIs, let's say it's 80% effective, we would have gotten 24 PIs. And I guarantee you, if they would have done their investigation and found 24 PIs out of 335 preg-tested in-calf heifers, they would have been on the phone to Pfizer with their lawyer sitting next to them saying, this vaccine doesn't work. You've given us some false expectations. The reality is that vaccine would have saved them, because they reckon the whole thing cost them $500,000. You know, they're top of the wazoo on their bull sales. The vaccine would have saved them 80% of their losses. And if they would have, once they realized that, then they realized that PestiGuard was a very good investment. But out of the context of, and with the unrealistic expectations of what PestiGuard can do, they would have been freaking pissed off, like insanely pissed off. So that's what's such a great story. And then there's such good people that they allowed me to talk about this at their team meeting with all their vendors there. And then they allowed me to disseminate this information. And it really helped people become aware of BVD within the Angus community. So there's a lot of non-systematic strategies. So one of them is random PI hunting. You know, it's kind of like just taking random ear notches here and there. You're going to reduce the number of PIs that way, because a lot of PIs do look tough. But if you're going to hunt them, get them all. You know, it's like trying to muster sheep one at a time. I mean, they do that in New Zealand on Fridays, but it's a very slow methodology for gathering. Sorry, Colleen. A very slow methodology for gathering things. So yeah, if you're going to hunt PIs, do it in a systematic fashion. Don't leave any behind. Because if you're going to leave one behind, you might as well have left them all behind. Auto-vaccination is a term I abhor. We're not vaccinating them when we shove a PI in with them. So, I mean, here's your beautiful line of heifers. You do some blood testing. Turns out they're all naive. And then someone says, well, let's go over and see if we can talk to Cletus, and we'll buy one of his PIs, and we'll take that animal who might have tyleria or friggin' who knows what the hell else. It definitely got uglyitis. And we're going to introduce it to our heifers. So PIs tend to get sick with everything. They tend to be wormier. They tend to have more, you know, they're unwell, and they carry a lot of different things. So they're going to suppress the immune system, all these ladies, simultaneously. So they're all going to get immune suppressed at the same damn time. And whatever else that little dickhead's carrying, he's going to introduce to them. So occasionally when I'm doing a program for someone and we find a bunch of PIs and there's a group of naive heifers there and we're running out of time to vaccinate, I'll say, look, we can use the PIs this year, but then get them gone. Because if you're using PIs effectively to auto-vaccinate, which I hate, you're actually making them sick with BVD. Eventually, you're not going to get any more PIs, and then you're going to have to go frickin' try to find one. So, yeah, I mean, just shoot the bastards or call them to slaughter. Use the vaccine where effective. Let's do this properly, because they are the fire. Imagine if you did have your little group of PIs and you went out and they're in the neighbor's place cavorting with their heifers. And then lastly, it is just not an ethical thing to do, PIs. So, you know, there's your at-risk animal. You know, he has no immunity, so we're going to bring a PI in. That's probably going to fix things. You know, he's here to help. That's probably what's actually going to happen. You don't want these bastards in your system. Here's why. It's unethical. The Norwegians, when they eradicated it, they reckon it'd take them about 20 years to pay off their interventions. They actually started making money in year 2. So by reducing the number of PIs in the Norwegian population, they saw production lifts enough to pay for all their interventions in the second year. They broke even in the first year. The second year, they were making money. But their motivation to eradicate BVD was in the death of these guys. So this is a PI, and when they die badly. And the Norwegians are pretty sensitive, and they said, look, We can't have these animals standing around in people's farms dying slowly. It's a bad, bad way to die. And they die in about a week to 10 days. It's called mucosal disease. So here's an animal. These are all ulcers on his nose. So, he's, I don't know if you can see that very well, but yeah, it's just the mucosal lining just sheds. And cells everywhere are dying, but the ones that are rapidly reproducing are most quickly evidenced. These are the buccal pads, so the gums. See those big, massive ulcers? I don't know if you ever had a tongue ulcer, but if you had one there where it's about the size of your head, I reckon it would hurt pretty bad. This is his tongue itself. He's got it's just sloughing. The tissue is just falling apart. These animals literally fall apart in front of you, and it is completely unethical. Here's the abomasum. He's got some homunculus in there as well. But you can see these big ulcers burning holes in his abomasum. Here's the lining of the jejunum, and it's just weeping blood and serum, and it's trying to clot, and it's just a shit show. It's just completely unfair. And so, again, I don't like the term auto-vaccination. I prefer strategic infection if you were going to do it. And literally, I think it's about as smart as, you got 10 kids and you want to protect your house. You're going to keep a Glock with one in the chamber sitting on your nightstand in case you get broken into. If you're keeping PIs to get your immunity going, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. Blanket vaccination, I also abhor. Sometimes people say, well, let's just keep it simple. Let's just vaccinate everything. Well, a lot of things are simple. Like I find that not harvesting my wheat crop would have been a lot simpler last year. But the reality is it probably wasn't the best financial decision. And so I think vaccinating animals that are already immune, to me, is an anathema to profitability. And it's really a sign of laziness. So if we can screen groups of animals and find out if they're immune, we can target that vaccine to where it's going to be effective. So in your own production system, we would blood test a handful of every one of these manager groups that you've got here, identify the groups that are at risk, and implement a vaccination strategy. And then we're going to focus on your replacement efforts. We're going to blood test them prior to mating. And if they're immune, we're going to do something about it. We're going to find any PIs and get rid of them if they're there. If they're not immune, I think I'm going to encourage you to vaccinate them. And they're going to go forward immune and PI free. And that's where you've drawn the line in the sand. We are not going to keep any more PIs as breeding animals. And over time, we will weed them out. Now, we can also hunt, if there's some adult PIs in the system, I'm going to show you in a minute how we can find them. But the focus is in making sure, at a minimum, that our groups of heifers go forward immune and PI-free when we mate them. And if we do that consistently, we will get on top of this disease, unless you've got just absolutely horrific biosecurity. And the cool thing is, if we do integrate this sort of philosophy, we will be able to not only guess if we've got good biosecurity, we can actually work it out by doing the ongoing blood testing. If you do everything properly, your heifers should start coming through antibody negative. If they're coming through antibody negative, you're winning. And you just keep it up. Blood test every group of heifers. So we'll get there in a second. So again, level of challenge. As I was saying before, PestiGuard's pretty good at stopping animals from the virus from replicating in animals. PIs, it's not good enough to do the job. And then lastly, there's doing nothing, which a lot of folks do. So I made this slide. That's pretty much what's going to happen if you do nothing, I reckon, eventually in almost any production system. And you may or may not even realize it happened. But here's where most people are. There's a lot of conflicting advice out there. Zoetis, they sell vaccine, and the vaccine's a good vaccine. And when I tried to work with them in the past, and I'd say, look, this is my advice, they'd say, that's a little bit too complicated for our salespeople. I'd say, well, in my opinion, this should be a vaccine that's, has a fair bit of veterinary oversight. Like, why don't you engage the veterinary community to get this out there? Because we're trained as veterinarians to work with people on this. So I think that mixed messaging is leading a lot of this indecision.